Good day, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to cover Canada's First Lady. Got some stuff I looked up. I don't have very many tools for searching, so some of it's pretty limited, but at the same time, pretty eye-opening. Look at that smile. I'd be pissed if somebody insinuated or accused me. I'd be choked. I wouldn't be trying to laugh and smile it off. That's You see how it's just like that border smile? It's not a full smile. It's one of those fake smiles. Yeah. To me, that's an expression of they got me. Like, how can I prevent them from reading me? Let's do a natural face. And I would have definitely got pissed right off trying to speak French and saying he's ignorant and then looking like more of a fool. And then I went to go and find the video of where he walked away from the reporter. I can't find it. Gotta love our censorship in Canada. So if you know where it is, tag me in the video. I'd love to get it again to review it. Without further ado, we're going to move on here and learn a little bit about Diana Fox Carney, as Canada's First Lady.
What I'm going to do, and I know there's people on this call with very different levels of knowledge around climate and where we are with respect to the climate crisis. So what I'm going to do to begin with is just lay out some of the parameters of our situation before we get into a discussion, Mark and I, around how we might move forward, what the expectations are from COP, and how society's values in general inform our behavior in this space. So if you'll give me a few minutes to give you a few facts, and forgive me if you know these already, but they are changing fast. There's been a lot of publicity in the last couple of weeks about Bill Gates's book around climate, which I will recommend to everyone. It is a very clear picture of where we are, but he talks about a number of 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases that are emitted annually. You'll also hear a number of 34 billion tons, which is the actual CO2, the carbon side. The rest of it is made up of other greenhouse gases, and we can talk a little bit about that. But both of those are critical numbers, and both those are numbers that we have to reduce down to zero if we're going to stabilize our climate. Atmospheric CO2 levels are up 50% on pre-industrial levels. We've already risen by 1 degree approximately. And one of the key points in this whole discussion is that 1 degree is not 1 degree for everyone. It's very variable. And we see that in Canada, in the Arctic here, the temperature rise is much higher than in the Mediterranean. So it's almost twice as high in the northern region. So even though 1 degree doesn't sound like much, it can be a huge amount. And we'll get into some of the impacts later on. But I think the critical thing is how far we are prepared to go as a society. There's been this target of 1.5 degrees. There is a 1 in 6 chance that we can't ever achieve that we've already exceeded that. And I think the key thing to have in mind is a carbon budget, which many of you will have heard about. If we are to maintain, everything is in the climate world is in probabilities, because our modeling doesn't enable us to be absolutely certain. But if we are to maintain a 66% chance, so that is not close to 100, but over 50% chance of staying within the Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degrees, we only have somewhere between 230 and 440 billion tons of carbon dioxide left to emit. So that's between 6 and 11 years of our current emissions. And nothing is exact, but what we're talking about is a decade ahead of us, which is absolutely critical. We've left it too late, but we have this critical decade ahead of us in which we can hope that we will still be able to achieve 1.5 degrees warming as opposed to 2 degrees or further. And I think that you're all aware that we're not on that path right now. We're on a path to about 3.8 degrees or 4 degrees. Mark, you can come in later on that, but where we are now is not nearly where we need to be. We want to aim for 1.5 degrees. 1.5 degrees is much better than 2 degrees, even though it's half a degree difference. It implies that nearly 2 billion people more will experience severe heat waves under 2 degrees than they will under 1.5 degrees. Sea levels will rise another 10 centimeters, which has a grave impact for coastal inundation. coral reefs are completely gone at 2 degrees, at 1.5 degrees. They are largely gone, but we could still retain some. And as I pointed out, there is much variability within the numbers. Food production, disease, other things are much higher at 2 degrees than 1.5 degrees.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people have seen this video with Mark talking here in this background where he talks about a bunch of stuff. But we're focusing on Diane today. So what do we know about Diane? Diane has a strong background in developing and climate policy, focusing on creating a more inclusive economic system. Eurasia Group. Fox Carney will work closely with Vice Chairman Gerald Butts. See, there's that name again. Pay attention to that. Who will negotiate the Paris Climate Agreement. There's another rabbit hole to dig down. She has worked with progressive think tanks and served on boards of environmental and children's charities. Diana Fox and Mark Carney explored the tensions between economic and environmental values at our latest Inspiring Speaker. Again, we can dig more into that. It's just another rabbit hole. Her expertise encompasses global climate and energy policy. And then there's this one here, another one she's involved in. I cannot pronounce that. It's some sort of school. Yeah, it's BALSILLIES. I cannot pronounce that. Here, we got this one here. International Affairs. Diana Carney is an advisor to companies and investors are seeking opportunities in the transition to greener, more natural, positive economy. Senior advisor on climate to growth equity fund beyond net zero and to Africa investor Helios Climate. She's also senior advisor at geopolitics advisor firm Eurasia Group. She began her career with the UK government in Zanzibar and has held leadership positions in think tanks in both Canada and the UK, a frequent webinar host and contributor to the work of Corporate Night. She is a current or past board member of several not-for-profit. Yeah, we all know how those go. Organizations in the climate and development space. I wonder how many payments Canada made to any of these companies. Obviously, I'm going to take note of that and investigate that one next time. That's another rabbit hole we can go down. And then here we have, actually, let's just go back. We're going to continue with the timeline here. Connections and roles. She's worked with her husband, Mark Carney, on discussion concerning global economic challenges, especially those related. Covered that one already. Senior advisor at a Eurasia Group. We covered that too. We'll go more into it later on. Chair of Helios, Clear Fund Investing Climate Adaptation and Mitigation to Africa. We covered that in that other article. All these links will be in the description. China and global economics. Actually, before that, we're going to touch on this. Involved in various organizations focused on environmental and social justice. Again, that's that school keeps popping up and all these other organizations beyond net zero, Helios. Their last meeting right here, China's economic transformation and its evolving role in the global economic emerged as strong themes at Davos 2025. In essence, Diana Carney is a significant figure in discussions surrounding climate change as an economic and its economic implications, with her work intersecting with global economic issues, including those related to China. Mark Carney, the former central banker, has now stepped into political spotlight. Canada's next prime minister, replacing Justin Trudeau. Meet Canada's new First Lady, Diana Fox Carney, the respected economist and academic author, comes from a privileged background. Met her husband at Oxford and is firmly against rampant consumerism. Diana met her husband, the new Canadian PM, Mark Carney, at Oxford University, where they both played ice hockey. They now have 4 daughters, and she is an economist who has spoken out against consumerism. All eyes are on Canada, where Mark Carney recently became Prime Minister after Justin Trudeau stepped down. His appointment came at a crucial time as the Great White North faces a trade war declared by U.S. President Donald Trump. If they don't want the tariffs, drop the tariffs and clean the streets. At Kearney's side, as she leads the country through one of its toughest challenges, is his wife, Diana Fox Carney, at the Liberal leadership race. Respected, Diana represents a stark contrast to her predecessor, Sophie Georgie Trudeau. Trudeau, a retired Canadian television host, was celebrated for her glamorous style and was the darling of the Canadian people, said Ellie. On March 9th, Mark Carney became the new unelected, hand-picked prime minister. Per People magazine, Carneys met when they were studying at Oxford University, both members of University Ice Hockey Club, according to University. British Canadian Diana was known for her ability to skate rings around her opponents and move effortlessly through the opposing defense line. Postgraduate and future Canadian Prime Minister, was the goaltender and joint captain of his team, which she led to victories against Cambridge University in 93-94. Probably the only thing he won. Diana Mark married in 94, 4 daughters, Chloe, Tess, Amelia, and Sasha. Chloe took center stage in March, introducing her father before he gave victory speech on election night. And again, we covered a little bit of this. Diana's LinkedIn profile, master degrees in philosophy, politics, and economics, agriculture, economics, and she's also a strategist for government policy. She served as Vice President of Canada 2020, a think tank focused on climate, energy, social mobility, and inequality. Director of Strategy and Engagement at Institute of Public Policy Research in London, and has been a trustee of the Friends of the Royal Academy and Worldwide Fund of Nature Ambassador. Dan has written 2 academic books focusing on public and private roles in agricultural service provision and natural resource management. Timeline: 1960s, exact date unknown, was born in the United Kingdom. Specific details about her early life, such as her exact birth date, childhood, are not widely publicized. Diana studied economics, met Mark Carney. Early career, worked in developments in economics, focusing on sustainable development and poverty alleviation. Held positions with organizations such as UK's Department of International Development, DFID, or similar entities. During this period, she began to develop expertise in environmental sustainability, which would later align with her husband's climate-focused initiatives. 2008 to 2013. Mark Carney became governor of Bank of Canada in 2008. Diana and their 4 children relocated to Ottawa. At this time, she continued her work in environmental social justice, though she maintained lower public profile compared to her husband. She likely engaged with Canadian organizations and incentives or initiatives related to sustainability, leveraging her background in economics. 2013 to 2020, London years. The family moved to London when Mark was appointed governor of Bank of England in 2013. Diana's involvement in environmental issues deepened during this period. She worked as a consultant or collaborator with various organizations, including those tied to World Economic Forum, where her husband was an active participant. Her focus included sustainable finance and climate-related economic policies. World Economic Forum involvement. Diana's direct involvement with the WEF is not prominently documented as Mark's, who was a key figure in the WEF events, i.e. Davis meetings in 2011, 12, 19, and as a contributor on climate finance. However, as an economist with a focus on sustainability, she is believed to have contributed to or influenced discussions on green economics, possibly through her husband's network or her own consultancy work. China's connections. Diana's direct ties to China are less explicit than Mark's, who has significant connections through his role at Brookfield Asset Management and meetings with Chinese officials. Xi Jinping in 2024. However, her work in sustainable development intersects with China's growing role in green technology and renewable energy. Areas emphasized at WEF events like the annual meeting of the New Champions Summer Davos held in China. She may have traveled to China or engaged with Chinese initiatives indirectly through her environmental work, especially given Mark's documented interaction with Chinese economic forums, i.e. the China Development Forum and Brookfield's investment in China, such as the $276 million loan from the Bank of China in November 2024. 2020 present, return to Canada and beyond. After Mark left the Bank of England in 2020, the family returned to Ottawa. Diana continued her work in sustainability, possibly as a consultant or advisor. While Diana herself is not directly linked to companies operating in China, her husband's leadership at Brookfield Asset until January 25 tied the family to investments in China, such as a partnership with Qatar Investment Authority and state-backed financial dealings. Diana's influence may have shaped Mark's focus on sustainable investment in these contexts. Wink, wink. Other involvement. Diana is known for her activism in social justice and environmental causes, often working behind the scenes. She has been involved with NGOs or think tanks focused on climate change and poverty through specific names are not always publicized. Her marriage to Mark Carney connects her to high-level economic and political networks, including the Bilderberg Group of 30, and various financial boards where Mark has served. Summary. World Economic Forum. Diana's involvement is likely indirect, though her expertise in sustainable economics and her husband's prominent WEF role, she may have contributed to climate finance or green policy discussions. In China, her connections are primarily through Mark's activities, Brookfield, China investments, meeting with Chinese leaders, and with potential overlap in her environmental work, given China's focus on green tech. Economics. Her career centers on development and environmental economics, influence her contributions to global sustainability dialogues. Company connections. Indirectly tied to Brookfield China dealings, no direct corporate roles are attributed to her. Due to the private nature of much Diana's work, this timeline relies on contextual synthesis from her husband's career and her known interests. For more precise details, we'll have to do a better, deeper search. Without further ado, again, thanks for coming out. The fox in sheep's clothes is now in the hen house. If you follow my channel, don't wait for tomorrow. Start today. Can't wait for Pierre to get in. We got to start doing what we got to do today to make a difference. So, calling everybody out that can make a difference, make a difference. If you can, volunteer at your local MLA, get some signs, have some interventions with family if needed. And again, if you made it this far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, follow for more. Take care. Have a great day.